Fun fact to start with. I'm speaking to you tonight about journalism in the building named for the man who helped launch my career in journalism. Huh? This is me. There I am. Back in 1988, anchoring a newscast at ITV News, which is now Global Edmonton. I got my big break a few years before that when I was ordered, to be ITV's Klondike Days reporter one summer. Unfortunately, or maybe fortunately for me, there's no photographic proof of that tonight, so I can't show you. ITV stood for Independent Television. The station was founded back in 1974 by Dr. Charles Allard. Dr. Allard was an Edmonton physician who had a keen interest in business and, yes, in starting his own TV station. He took a chance on me and countless other young journalists over the years and launched our careers. Now, all these years later, I have the privilege and the responsibility of training the next generation of journalists right here in this building, not far from where we are this evening. And that's what I hope to do with you tonight, to teach you a little bit about journalism. My talk is entitled, We Are All Journalists, and my goal is to encourage you to basically think and act like journalists when it comes to consuming news and thinking about news. A few weeks ago, I was lucky enough to be on a beach in Mexico with my wife, Michelle. We began speaking with a couple next to us, and the lady from Winnipeg said, "So, what do you do?" And I said, "Well, I was a journalist, and now I teach journalism in Edmonton." Her response, predictable, "So, you're to blame for all that damn fake news." She laughed when she said it. I laughed too, and then I said nicely, "Well, I don't think you can solely blame journalists for the problem. Social media plays a major role in the problem of fake news as well." At least that's what my outside voice said. My inner voice, after being blamed once again for that damn fake news, was kind of shouting at her. Well, wait a minute. You're as much to blame as journalists are. You're one of those people who reads those stories on Facebook and hits like and share without really even thinking about it. And so on, and so on. But then, she surprised me. She said she had actually started checking into the accuracy of some of the stories she found on Facebook because she found them to be so outrageous and so enraging. And she admitted it was actually easy to do. She said it only took her a few minutes each time. And I was about to compliment her on her journalist-like skills when she surprised me once again because she said she had actually quit Facebook simply because there was too much crap. The conversation turned to other things that day on the beach, but her comments stuck with me, and actually, they kind of inspired me. You see, in this post-truth era, when misinformation and disinformation abound, when politicians and other people in positions of power can say or tweet almost anything, when journalists are under fire on a daily basis, I believe we can still turn things around. To understand the importance of investing time in the truth, that's what I want you to do tonight. Tonight I hope to convince you, and first though I'll explain a little bit about how we got into this mess in the first place. Because fake news is not new. Fake news has been around for centuries under various names. Kings and other rulers used inaccurate information, misleading information about wars and other things to hide the reality or to curry favor with their followers. But in the past decade, the growth and evolution of social media has made it much easier for anyone with a computer, or a phone for that matter, to manipulate us with made-up news stories and headlines that look so much like the real thing. And they can reach thousands of people, even millions, with a keystroke. Social media has changed how journalists do their jobs, how they gather news. And social media has also changed how you consume news. Many of you, I'm sure, depend on Facebook when it comes to your daily news fix. Social media has also changed the rules of mass communication and who has the power to influence us and set the agenda for what's important or what we think is important. And you could argue that there's one man who probably more or less is responsible for this more than anybody else. Yep, Donald Trump. He's one of the most powerful people in the world, and his use of social media, especially Twitter, has changed the game. Trump's tweets label notable mainstream media as fake news and the enemy of the people. And he routinely chooses to bypass the media with his messaging, going directly to his followers on Twitter. His tweets also routinely make headlines and make news because of their often outrageous content, which means that he's reaching even more people outside of his Twitter followers. And how many Twitter followers does he have? Well, when he was first elected in 2016, he had about 13 million followers on Twitter. That's not too bad. This month, I just checked the other day, he's at more than 57 million followers, 2 years into his term. Now, of course, Trump's been called many things, probably by some of you. But some people do admit he is a master of Twitter. He uses the platform to distract us as much as inform us. We can't blame him for everything, though. Distorting the truth, creating fake news has become a business for some, a very lucrative business. This is one of the most prolific of these digital entrepreneurs, an American named Christopher Blair. In fact, he's been labeled the Godfather of fake news for what he does. His Facebook page is called America's Last Line of Defense. The one-time construction worker now spends his days constructing stories on Facebook. Outrageous, enraging stories that have one thing in common. They're all completely fake. These stories, however, are still read and shared by hundreds of thousands of people who follow him on Facebook. Even though Blair clearly states on the Facebook page that nothing on this page is real, not a bit of it. He goes so far as to label the Facebook page an entertainment website. Yet that doesn't seem to deter his followers from hitting share. Now, all of this, Donald Trump's tweets, Blair's headlines, serves to create confusion for all of us. What's accurate? What's true? How can we cut through the deception? How can we detect the lies and defend the truth? So tonight, I'm going to give you a crash course in journalism. Crash course. Some simple tips to enable and empower you to be more like my friend that I met on that beach in Mexico. Let's begin. When it comes to detecting fake news stories online, there are some telltale signs. Unusual URL or website names, some of them end in .co, for example. That's a giveaway. You can watch for that. Headlines written in all capital letters, or sloppy grammar, careless spelling. Those are all signs of amateur journalists, not professional journalists. And also be wary of bold, brash headlines that aren't supported by anything else within the story. If they seem hard to believe, they probably are. It's vitally important as well to slow down a bit and read beyond the headline. Even in legitimate news stories, the headline doesn't always tell you the whole story. So read the story. You can also click on the About link on a website and check the credentials of those people who are behind the site. And before you think about sharing, search for other versions of that news story on some news sites that you trust. If you can't find that story, chances are it's not accurate. Finally, check your emotions. Fake news is written to get reactions and overreactions from you. So take a deep breath. Count to 10 before you even think about hitting share. Now, please know that you're not alone in this fight. There are sources of truth out there. Increasingly, news organizations are putting more resources into fact-checking. The Washington Post, for example, uses its Pinocchio test to verify stories and claims, many of which are suggested by its readers. Not surprisingly, the Post fact-checkers keep a close watch on what Donald Trump says. Anyone out here care to hazard a guess on how many false or misleading claims the Pinocchio test has detected for the president during his first 2 years in office? Anybody? How many? You're close. This week, the Post reported that it checked and verified 8,158 misleading claims made by the president in his first 2 years in office. There are other fact-checking sources out there you can turn to. PolitiFact.com has its Truthometer, and it focuses mainly on US politics. Factcheck.org scrutinizes politics as well, but it also has something called its Viral Spiral that debunks online rumors. And then there's Snopes, one of the oldest and best-known websites out there. Here's one example of what Snopes does. This photo of Prime Minister Trudeau seemingly snapping a selfie in front of a burning Canadian flag. This made the rounds on social media just after Christmas in late December. Some people on Twitter labeled the Prime Minister a traitor for this picture. Snopes did some digging and found the selfie photo of Trudeau is real. But it was actually taken by a CTV News reporter in November as the Prime Minister was touring Singapore. The snoopers then discovered that the burning flag photo, also real, was actually taken way back in 2010 at a G20 protest in Toronto. Snopes learned that the Trudeau selfie was digitally made into a template and then inserted into a whole number of tweets and other things on social media, fake photos, including the burning maple leaf photo. Snopes exposed the disinformation on its website and labeled the story and the photograph as false. Now, I'm not letting journalists off the hook tonight. They too need to start thinking and acting more like the journalists they were trained to be. They can't be a megaphone for politicians and others. Instead of simply reacting to falsehoods and twisted truths, how about more reporting that actually helps explain the story and explain the issue and provides the context that we need in these confusing times? Journalist and Harvard researcher James Harkin has this suggestion. He said, why not try restoring our authority by doing less but with greater depth and context? The result would be a slower kind of journalism, which relies on the accumulation of details. Now, Harkin wrote this last week, before this story came out. Some say this story could have benefited from a more slow type of journalism. I'm sure you saw this picture, or the video. It created a firestorm on social media, targeting the boy in the Make America Great Again cap, threatening him as he seemingly, or did, confront a Native elder and Vietnam War vet. The video, and this image in particular, went viral in hours. News organizations around the world jumped on it too soon, too quickly. In the days that followed, other videos, other photographs, other accounts of what happened have surfaced, and they're still surfacing. The new angles have caused confusion and prompted journalists to clarify, even backtrack on their original stories. It's also led to more questions about accuracy in reporting and the truth overall. So, confusion, distortion, accuracy, this is where we're at in 2019. Just a few weeks ago, Time magazine dedicated its annual Person of the Year edition to some of the journalists battling in this war on truth. Time's editor-in-chief said the decision was prompted by, quote, the increasingly slippery nature of truth. Now, news has always been competitive, but too often these days, because of social media, news organizations have fallen in prey to the publish first and correct later style of journalism. It's not right. So where do we go from here, you ask? What can I do to make a difference? Well, by adopting some of the journalism skills in that crash course I gave you tonight, I do believe that you can do that, and you can also demand more and demand better from both journalists and the news organizations they work for. Social media isn't going away, but responsible use of social media is the responsibility of all of us. Thank you very much.